Audiobook Academy Biography presents Jane Goodall. As one of the most pioneering studies of primates in contemporary times, Jane Goodall spent years living among chimpanzees in Tanzania. What is Jane Goodall's name? While in Tanzania, she conducted research on wild chimpanzees with Jane Goodall. Her observations concerning primate behavior have continued to affect scientific debate because she engaged herself in their lives, avoiding more strict techniques. The Jane Goodall Institute, which she founded, fights for the protection of the world's natural resources. Early life and animal interests. To Mortimer Herbert Goodall and the former Margaret Mivannway Joseph, Goodall was born on April 3, 1934, in London. He is a businessman and a motor racing aficionado. Goodall was raised in London and Bournemouth, England, with her sister, Judy. Goodall's interest in animal behavior began at a young age, when she was just a youngster. Her spare time was spent watching and sketching native birds and animals, as well as reading heavily in the fields of biology and anthropology. For as long as she can remember, she's wanted to see exotic animals in their natural habitats in Africa. As a student at Uplands Private School, Goodall graduated with a high school diploma in 1950 and a college diploma in 1952. She went on to work as an Oxford University secretary while simultaneously financing a long-planned journey to Africa by working part-time at a London-based documentary production firm. Learning from Louis Leakey, an anthropologist. Ended in the 1950s, Goodall traveled to South Kinangop in Kenya to see an old friend. She met renowned anthropologist Louis Leakey, who was then the curator of the Corindon Museum in Nairobi, through other friends. To help with the excavation of the now famous Olduvai Gorge, which contains fossils of early human ancestors, Leakey employed her as his secretary. Goodall was also sent to Lake Victoria to examine the vervet monkey, a small primate that lives on an island. Leakey hoped that a long-term study of the behavior of higher monkeys would give valuable evolutionary information. As the second most intelligent ape, the chimpanzee, was of particular interest to him. Researchers have had limited success in their research of chimpanzees, mainly due to their size or lack of time in the field. It was Leakey's opinion that Goodall had the temperament to survive in the jungle for a lengthy period of time. She consented to take part in the investigation at his urging. Leakey's pick of Goodall was criticized by several specialists because she had no formal scientific training and did not even have a bachelor's degree. Experiencing chimpanzees in the wild. In July 1960, Goodall and her mother traveled to Tanzania's Gombe Stream Reserve to research chimpanzees in the Gombe Stream Reserve on Lake Tanganyika. There were no closer than 500 yards between Goodall and the chimpanzees during her first attempts to study them. Having found another group to follow, she formed a non-threatening habit of observation, appearing at the same time each morning on the high ground near a feeding spot in the Kakum Valley. Chimpanzees quickly became tolerant of the researcher's presence and permitted her to get as near to their eating area as 30 feet away within a year. After 2 years of seeing her every day, they no longer feared her and frequently approached her in search of bananas. Observations on chimp behavior. Goodall established the Banana Club, a way of feeding chimpanzees that she used to gain their trust and gain a better grasp of their daily routines. She was able to get to know most of the chimps on the reserve this way. She spent time in the trees, mimicked their habits, and ate their food. Goodall found a slew of new behaviors in the chimpanzees by being in near constant touch with him. There are more than 20 distinct sounds in the chimpanzee language, she said, citing the intricate social system that includes rituals and communication mechanisms. For the first time, chimpanzees were observed eating meat and manufacturing and utilizing tools. Humans were originally thought to be the only creatures capable of manufacturing tools. Furthermore, Goodall reported that chimpanzees toss stones as weapons, utilize contact and embraces to console each other, and form long-term familial relationships. As part of the group's socio-economic stratification, the male does not play an active role in family life. It is common for lower castes of chimpanzees to perform obediently in the presence of the most powerful males in order to escape potential injury. The intensity of a male's entrance performance at feedings and other gatherings is generally correlated with his rank. Goodall's observations of chimps hunting, killing, and eating huge insects, birds, and even larger animals, such as infant baboons and bushbucks, challenged the conventional wisdom that chimps were strictly vegetarians, small antelopes. She documented cannibalism on one occasion. The chimpanzees were observed placing blades of grass or leaves into termite hills to attract insects onto the blades of grass or leaves. They used the grass as a long-handled spoon to eat the termites after modifying it to match their needs. The Best Jane Goodall Documentaries and Films. In 1965, Jane Goodall and the Wild Chimpanzees was first broadcast on American television and exposed the public to her life's work. Chimpanzees became a mainstay of public television in the United States and Great Britain when the documentary was filmed by her first husband and narrated by Orson Welles, who portrayed the shy but tenacious young Englishwoman. As a result of these initiatives, Goodall pushed scientists to re-examine long-held assumptions about the differences between monkeys and humans. For Jane, a documentary that featured new interviews with a renowned activist in order to build a more comprehensive narrative of her experiences with the gorillas. Extra footage from the Miss Goodall shooting was stitched together in 2017. Academe and Public Education. In 1965, Goodall became the 8th person in Cambridge University's lengthy history to be permitted to seek a PhD without first earning an undergraduate degree, cementing her academic credentials in the field of ethology. For the next 2 decades, Goodall served as a visiting professor in psychiatry at Stanford and as an honorary zoology professor at the University of Dar es Salaam in Tanzania. When Goodall attended a symposium on the ethical treatment of chimpanzees in Chicago in 1986, she decided to dedicate the rest of her life to enlightening the general public about the dwindling wild chimpanzee population and the cruel treatment of chimps in scientific study. Goodall advises African countries to implement nature-friendly tourist projects as a means of preserving the wild chimpanzee's ecosystem. As a proponent of ecological stewardship, she collaborates with local companies and government agencies. According to Goodall, scientists must do more to develop alternatives to the use of animals in research. Violent or destructive demonstrations by animal rights militants have been officially condemned by her. She believes that extremes on both sides of the issue polarize thought and make it practically hard to have a productive discussion. However, she believes that new scientists need to be taught how to treat animals more humanely, notwithstanding her reservations about the continued use of animals in research. From an animal's perspective, what would undoubtedly classify as torture is routinely taught to pupils as ethically acceptable, according to her. Books by Jane Goodall. There have been countless articles and books based on Goodall's fieldwork that have been published. Her first major work, In the Shadow of Man, was published in 1971. As a field study of chimpanzees, the book crossed the gap between scholarly treatise and popular culture. Although some critics found her inclination to give chimpanzees human characteristics and names as manipulative, her evocative prose brought the chimpanzees to life and revealed an animal world of social drama, comedy, and tragedy. She wrote in her 1990 book Through a Window that the more we learn of the true nature of non-human animals, especially those with complex brains and corresponding complex social behavior, the more ethical concerns are raised regarding their use in the service of man, whether this be in entertainment, as pets, for food, in research laboratories, or any of the other uses to which we subject them. As with vivisection, this concern is heightened when the usage in question results in extremely high levels of bodily or mental pain. It was with this in mind that she penned her children's book, The Chimpanzee Family Book, in 1989. Goodall utilized the prize money from the UNICEF/UNESCO Children's Book of the Year award to have the book translated into Swahili and French and distributed throughout Tanzania, Uganda, and Burundi. Jane Goodall Institute. The Jane Goodall Institute for Wildlife Research, Education, and Conservation, a nonprofit dedicated to chimpanzee conservation and environmental stewardship, serves as the umbrella organization for many of Goodall's projects. Although the organization was founded in 1977, it has more than 24 locations around the world. Conflict over a book. Goodall's book Seeds of Hope, Wisdom and Wonder from the Plants, co-written with Gail Hudson, was widely publicized in March 2013. Even though Goodall's book had not yet been released, she was accused of plagiarizing. Famous scientist has been accused of using Wikipedia and other sources without crediting them in her latest book. The book's release date was then postponed as the publisher investigated the unattributed passages. This was a lengthy and well-researched work, and I am dismayed to see that some good and valuable sources were not properly mentioned, and I want to convey my deepest apologies, the author said in a statement released by her institute. In 2014, a new edition of Seeds of Hope was published. Family. The National Geographic Society sent Dutch wildlife photographer and filmmaker Baron Hugo van Lawick, 1937–2002, to Africa in 1962 to record Goodall in action. They married on March 28, 1964. Their European honeymoon was one of the few times Goodall was not present at Gombe, where he had been conducting research. Hugo Eric Louis, also known as Grub, was born to her in 1967. Goodall married Derek Bryson, 1922–1980, a member of Tanzania's parliament and director of the country's national parks, in 1974 after divorcing Van Lovick. Bryson died of cancer in 1980, and Goodall remained married to him until her death in 1980. Accolades. The San Diego Zoological Society awarded Goodall the Gold Medal of Conservation in 1974, the J. Paul Getty Wildlife Conservation Prize in 1984, the Schweitzer Medal of the Animal Welfare Institute in 1987, the National Geographic Society Centennial Award in 1988, and the Kyoto Prize in Basic Sciences in 1990. These honors and awards were in recognition of Goodall's work. As of 2002, the United Nations designated her a Messenger of Peace. More recently, in 2003, Queen Elizabeth II honored her with the title of Dame of the British Empire. Thank you for listening in Audiobook Academy. Don't forget to subscribe and smash that like button for more content like this. See you in next video.